So, as many of you might know, Record of Ragnarok, or Shumetsu no Valkyrie for those of you that are the manga readers, has officially gotten its anime adaptation through Netflix, and because of that, and because you guys seem to really like the previous video I did on Records of Ragnarok, I've decided to take the 6 combatants that have appeared in the anime and pit them up against certain characters here on the channel. And come on, it really was not a hard pick for who to pit Lu Bu up against. Like, it should be so obvious that the man Lu Bu, touted as being the strongest man, should go up against the strongest Shinigami. I mean, for God's sakes, they even look super similar. So we'll be opening up this Records of Ragnarok versus Bleach style tournament, or whatever we're going to call it, with Lu Bu versus Kenpachi. And if you guys want to see more of this type of content, you can show your support by leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment down below on who you guys think would win and why. I'll be treating this like every other versus battle here on the channel. We'll go over each combatant's strength, speed, and abilities, and then talk about who would win if they were to meet in the ring. So without further ado, let's start off by talking about the boy Lu Bu's strength. So Lu Bu technically should be able to scale to really anything in the series, as they do consistently say that he is the strongest human. Now, I know a lot of people have contention with this because we have characters like Adam and Kojiro that people believe could actually beat Lu Bu, and that's perfectly fine. They don't have to be the absolute strongest human to actually be able to beat him. All they're saying about Lu Bu is that physically, he is the most superior human being. Hence why Brynhildr chose to lead off with him in their vanguard, because they really didn't know what they were going to be going up against, so why not just throw the strongest man at the God's vanguard and hope for the best. So because he is the strongest man, he should be able to scale to any of the human feats. But it actually gets a bit better than that, because in the anime, they really double down on the narrative between Lu Bu and Thor, the narrative being that it is the strongest man versus the strongest god, and they blatantly state a few times that Thor is not only just the strongest Norse god, but the strongest god of all the gods present. Now, this is a bit contentious because of how they talk about Zeus in the following fight, but if you want to grant that to Thor, and you want to grant it because of the narrative of the battle, then really, Thor and both Lu Bu should be able to scale to any feats in the series. This does actually help them out quite a bit, because Thor on his own isn't bad. They state a few times that he can crush the continents with his Mjolnir. And then there's actually a few statements as well saying he could destroy the planet with Mjolnir, as it contains that much power to do so. Obviously, Lu Bu scales to Mjolnir as he's able to block it numerous times. But then if Thor is going to be the strongest god, and then is like scaling above characters like Zeus, who just casually tanked the Big Bang, and this would actually bump them up to being like universal beings, as obviously the Big Bang created the universe as we know it. So I know it's quite the gap, it's a pretty big range. Using what they already demonstrate for Thor, it'd be like continental to planetary. But if you want to buy into the narrative of them being both the strongest man and the strongest god and being able to fight one another, then you could bump them up to universal because they scale above characters like Zeus who tank the Big Bang. Again, I'm not saying I fully support either one, I'm just saying these are the arguments that are presented for us, and it really depends on which one you buy into. Now, I'm going to have to really streamline Kenpachi because it depends on which Kenpachi we're using, and I don't want to just make this my why Kenpachi is stronger than you think video all over again. So basically, just to streamline, Soul Society Art Kenpachi scales to Toshiro, who can make these massive storm clouds that require large mountain levels of force to create, which really isn't all that impressive, so I don't really think we're going to be focusing on Soul Society Art Kenpachi. The only way that Kenpachi would be relevant in any way is if we're going to kind of wank the Sokyoku, where it can destroy all things in existence. So if you want to use that, then fine, by all means. But I really don't think it's necessary to focus on earlier arc versions of Kenpachi when we have characters like Arrancar Saga Kenpachi, who scales to the Espada, who not only can destroy Las Noches with the Gran Rey Zero, but he actually fights the most powerful of the Espada and Yami, who scales above characters like Stark and Ulquiorra, who are strong enough to destroy Las Noches merely by existing in their resurrected states. Las Noches is about small country in terms of its size, however destroying Las Noches, if you want to apply vaporization with something like a Cero, would actually require multi-continental levels of force. Then it actually gets better or a bit more consistent with the Thousand Year Blood War when Kenpachi fights Gremmy. See, Gremmy's meteor usually falls in like the continental to multi-continental range, usually varying on how large the person calking thinks the Serete is. At the end of the day though, this does help make this level of power consistent for Kenpachi, but you also have the argument that Gremmy could create multi-galaxy sized pocket dimensions, yet he couldn't imagine something strong enough to contain Kenpachi's power. That's actually why Gremmy dies at the end of the day. So you could say that Gremmy can't imagine anything stronger than Kenpachi despite being able to imagine multi-galaxy sized realms, meaning Kenpachi would be at least low multi-galaxy, scaling above Gremmy's imagination. So we do have a pretty decent range for Kenpachi as well. Now, speed is where things get a bit contentious for Record of Ragnarok, because Adam and Zeus have some of the best speed showings in the entire series, reaching massively faster than light levels of speed, if not possibly surpassing time itself. However, it's very contentious if anybody even scales to that level of speed, because if we're just using Lubu versus Thor by itself, the most they say for Thor is that he's got like lightning fast speed, which is good, but it's not all that impressive, especially if you know anything about Bleach. The argument you could try to make is that because Lubu is said to be the strongest human, it also means he's the fastest. You would have to argue this off the merit that they're talking about Lubu's physical stats being the strongest. You would need to use some of the commentary from the human crowd, where they say taking in physical attributes, Lubu is the most superior. If you take statements like that into account, you might be able to argue that Lubu has the same speed, or if not superior speed, to someone like Adam, who's capable of reaching massively faster than light levels of speed. But if not, if you cannot successfully argue that, which I think it's very dodgy in and of itself, then Lubu's just gonna have like lightning quick reactions, which is not very good. And the reason I say that is because Bleach was like reaching levels of light speed in the very first arc. They were at least relativistic in the first arc, with Ichigo being able to react to the Sero. If you don't remember, Ichigo is able to block a Sero from a Menos Grande, which is calced to being relativistic. You also have a drained Shuhei in the next arc being able to react to Negacion, and that comes out to being 5 to 10% the speed of light. Then further on down the line, you have characters like Shunsui and Stark demonstrating speed at like 75 times the speed of light. And then God forbid we get into stuff like the Mime Hage that travels like multi-solar system sized distances in just a few moments, resulting in it being like MFTL plus, like literally millions upon millions of times the speed of light, which is the entire reason I'm saying that it's not all that impressive for Lubu to be at like lightning levels of speed, because Bleach already has relativistic stuff at the very beginning of the series. And then even lesser characters like say Yami in his base form, who's not all that strong and not all that fast, is still capable of using stuff like the Bala, which is 20 times faster than a Sero, which is already light speed in and of itself. So the idea that Bleach is like lightning speed isn't even in the equation. Like, even if you want to go to Can't Fear Your Own World to really try to downplay the series, when Candace is fighting Ginjo and all of them, they demonstrate that lightning speed is not anything compared to the Bleach characters. They even mention, well, what if it's amped lightning? And they're like, nah, we're moving at light speed now. Lightning is literally nothing to us. They make that very abundantly clear. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really think we need to go over abilities. I think we can kind of skip right into the conclusion of this battle, because both Lubu and Kenpachi aren't really ability-based fighters. Like, their abilities are just, I swing even harder. Like, Lubu has Sky Eater, but what is that? That's literally just an even more powerful swing. Kenpachi has stuff like Kendo, but what is that? It's literally just an even more powerful swing. He has Bankai, but what does that do? Oh, it just makes him more Ooga Booga powerful. Like, they don't really have traditional abilities per se. You could say that Kenpachi has a Zanpakuto, so therefore he attacks the soul directly, but that's literally what Record of Ragnarok is. You summon the human people back as souls, and in order to kill them, you have to erase their soul. That's the entire point of the show. So needless to say, I'm pretty sure Lubu's not going to get just soul erased by Kenpachi's Zanpakuto, since he's resisting that throughout the entire battle, and that's the whole premise of the show. So really, what this comes down to is whether or not you buy into some of the high-end Lubu arguments, otherwise he's getting stomped into the ground. Because lightning speed is not going to allow him to keep up with really any version of Kenpachi at all whatsoever. The only thing that he'd be relying on is his actual strength, because if you're going to argue him at being planetary, which is somewhat fine because they clarify like Mjolnir at full power should be around planetary, should have the power to destroy the planet and everything. And even though Lubu's legs do break, he is still able to stop the attack. But then the problem is that like Kenpachi at that point could just wear him out. Maybe the best you could argue for that Lu Bu is that Kenpachi gets cocky and like tries to just face tank one of Lu Bu's attacks and gets completely obliterated. But that doesn't work when we start getting to stronger versions of Kenpachi, especially the ones in the 1,000-Year Blood War that are reaching like multi-galaxy levels of power and are massively faster than light. The only way Lu Bu can compete is if you do take all of his arguments to the absolute max. You have to effectively argue that Thor is the strongest god, that it's not hyperbolic, that it's not just them trying to hype up Thor, that he actually is the god amongst gods, the strongest of all of them, making him stronger than Zeus, who casually existed in the Big Bang. Because while you could try to argue that, well, wouldn't all the gods have to take the Big Bang? The only one that we know was there was Zeus. He's the only one that says this is the best excitement I've had since the Big Bang. We don't have confirmation that the others have survived it. So therefore, we don't just grant that to them for free. So if you want to grant that absolute max level of power for Thor and Lu Bu, and you want to say that because Lu Bu is the strongest man, and because of the commentary from the humans in the crowd, where they mention like, well, if we're taking all physical attributes into account, Lu Bu is the strongest, and therefore say he scales above Adam and Zeus' speed, then by all means Lu Bu would be able to beat Kenpachi, any version of Kenpachi, because then at that point he's universal and way faster than Kenpachi could ever hope to be. But then again, that means you're absolutely granting all of this insane nonsense to Lu Bu, and then at that point, why do we not just grant the same nonsense to Kenpachi and just say that he's like a fifth dimensional being because he's stronger than Dangai Ichigo at that point? I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments to argue, but with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the first Record of Ragnarok versus Bleach video. I have a few ideas for who I want Thor to fight, but I'm actually open to suggestions for who you guys would actually think would be an appropriate match for Thor and the other combatants that are shown in the anime. I will not be diving into the manga because I don't want to spoil it for the anime only watchers. That's why I've kind of been dancing around using things in the manga. But by all means, leave your suggestions in the comments down below. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.